Welcome to the Leadership in Land podcast, where we talk about what actually moves the needle in the land business. This show isn't about getting rich or quick schemes or magic mail pieces. It's about leadership, systems, decision making, the stuff that you just happen to figure out after your third or fourth pricing mistake, or maybe just your first. This deal looks great on paper, guy, in a moment. Well, tune in with me today, my friends, and let's dive right in.
You're listening to the RE Tipster Podcast Network.
Okay, so quick question for you. Have you heard of our school community? I just want to make sure to invite you to check that out. If you're listening to this episode, it's actually kind of old, to be honest with you. And so if you want our latest, if you want our greatest content we're putting out, real conversations about leadership, decision making, building a land business that actually works in the real world, get inside our school community where you get access to the free leadership course, plus bonus episodes, discussions, and insights that honestly just don't make it onto the podcast. So if you're serious about this, you want to learn more about leadership, get in the community, check it out, leadershipinland.com or school.com/leadershipinland. All right, let's get in the episode. Hello, my friends, and welcome back to another Leadership in Land podcast. I'm your host, Dave Deniston of Generation Family Properties and the Land End Conference. I am honored to have you back with me, where our goal is to help at least 1,000 land investors be the best leader that they can be. Well, my next guest, I've gotten to know him some over the last year and a half or so, and I'll tell you, I am impressed by this guy. He's really dialed in on his VAs and his systems and his teams. I know, and I've heard of other people interning through him, so he's been a great leader and upcoming influencer in the land space. Please help me welcome Michael Balcom. Mike, what's up?
Dave, how are you, my friend? Thanks for having me.
You bet. You bet. It was I was thinking of you the other day because our buddy in common, Ryan Love, I'm going to be seeing him in a couple of days coming up here to the Boundary Waters, and I know he had interned under you, so you had this whole intern program going on that we'll have to talk about, that I think is unique, that most land investors I know don't have interns. You know, they might have a VA or whatever. So I'd love to talk about that, Mike. Now, I know you've been on a few podcasts like Kendall Lejeune's OnlyFans, and got Seth's that has come out recently. And any recommendations on if people want to learn about you and kind of your background, where should we send them to?
Yeah, absolutely. If you want to learn about me, going to Seth's podcast is a great place. I really break it all down with Kindle on Only Land Fans as well, doing a basic intro about myself and business, as well as a master class on hiring and training VAs. So anything we don't drop here, you can probably find out over there. Or you can even just go to my website, learn more about me, MikeBalcom.com. So sure, we'll drop that in the show notes. Love it.
Love it. Now, Mike, tell us about kind of your land business today. As of mid-August 2024, tell us about your land business, the staff you have, the kind of operation you're running.
Yeah, land business is going well. As we know, in the current marketplace, dispositions have slowed down a little bit, but no worries at all there. Right now, I am very blessed in my land business. I have a phenomenal team. We have 8 core members right now, and then about 25 to 30 data scrubbers that are separate from the core team also, which is a lot of fun. Yeah, I mean, they're like family to me. So I know you and I are both avid travelers, and it always feels weird to me when I'm traveling for a while and I actually don't talk to my team. I'm used to at least hopping on a call with them for 10, 15 minutes daily, things like that. But I love them to death. They're great at it. They're great at acquisitions, great at research, and they really run the business. I really try to just stay out of their way.
Love it. Love it. I know with the travel thing, I'll tell you, as a leader, one of my favorite things I ever did was going out to the Philippines. And we did it for 2 reasons. One, my oldest daughter graduated high school. So I told her, pick anywhere you want to go and we'll go there. And so she picked the Philippines. And I was like, I got VAs there. And a guy that had been with me for 4 years, his name's Johnson, this really super solid guy who was actually going through a divorce. And I paid for his tickets, and he got to join with us and kind of, help guide us to an extent. But these are places even he hadn't gone to. So it was a really awesome experience of being with my family and all of us getting to know him. It was so cool. talking about being part of the family, which I consider him an extension of ours. Have you done that yet with your travels? You seen some of your VAs?
No, plans are in the works. I'm going to hang out with some people from my team early next year, actually going to a team member's wedding in Pakistan. So that should be interesting. Yeah. Right in the capital, safe to travel there and everything. So looking forward to that. And then also hopefully making a trip to the Philippines, either toward end of this year or early next year as well, and hang out with some of the other team members. So it should be good. I also set a really high goal for him, though. And I said, look, if we meet this goal, I'll fly everyone to the Philippines. We can all hang out together as a huge team. So
Nice.
We'll see if it happens.
Ooh, all right. Well, you mentioned you have 8 core people. So break that down for me. Who's on the team? What do they do outside of the scrubbers that you said?
Yes. So I'll talk with my leadership team first. I have 2 main leaders in my business. First and foremost is Amy. Amy's my executive assistant, and she probably spends about 60-70% of the time within the land business, and then the other 30-40% of the time just in my own personal life, just helping manage my calendar, my schedule, my everyday life. She is phenomenal, absolutely a gift, one of the best people I've ever worked with before. So she's amazing. And then the other leader in my business, Elise, she actually started with me over 2 years ago now. She's been with me a while, and she started as a texter. Fascinating thing about Elise's shown amazing leadership and growth in the business, somewhat rapidly too. And then when ChatGPT came out, I approached Elise and I said, look, one of 2 things is going to happen. A, ChatGPT is just going to take your spot because we do mostly text outreach. It's either going to take your spot, it'll never have holidays, it'll never feel sick or never go to the restroom, and I'll have to let you go in probably 3 to 6 months. Or B, you can figure out what outreach processes work best for us, manage our whole outreach, and kind of take ownership of that. And then you can be telling me what AI should be replacing the texting side of, and you can help build out everything. And she said, I would love that. So now she's been in charge of that side of things. So Amy really helps us manage the data in the business, as well as so many other random admin tasks. And then Elise really looks over our acquisitions and dispositions team. So it works really well there. From there on the data side, we have a data analyst. She's amazing, helps us with data management, as well as just analyzing areas to target. And she's trained in AI as well. So she's helping scrub areas, figuring out what areas to target in terms of subdivides, entitlements, fun stuff like that. And then Amar also does all our due diligence on the back end once a property comes in. And he's just figuring out exactly the nitty gritty of it and taking a more solid look at everything. From there, too, on the acquisition side, underneath Elise, we have Aya and Joyce. Both of them are amazing. They're both acquisitions managers, lead managers, intake callers, whatever you'd like to call them. Everyone's business names them something differently, so I never know, but they're just our first line of defense, so to speak, on the phone. And they're awesome. I would strongly recommend never hopping on a Zoom call with them because they are amazing to talk to, and you'll end up talking to them all day long and not get any work done. But that's also what you want in a caller. And then their other counterpart is Sarah. And Sarah's a closer in the business. So they usually set appointments for Sarah, and then Sarah goes in and closes out the deal at the end of it. And then Sarah's also helping them train to be closers and how they can close deals themselves as well.
Love it. Love it. So it sounds like you kind of have like a marketing department of people helping on the marketing side. You have kind of a lead management acquisitions department doing that stuff. In terms of the staff, it's a lot of the names to me when you said them kind of sounded foreign. So is it mostly international VAs? Are any of those domestic? Break that down for me there.
Yeah, only person that's domestic is Sarah. She is in South Carolina. Besides that, everybody else is overseas. Amy and Joyce are in the Philippines. Mar and Elise are in Pakistan. Janessa, as well, our data analyst. She is also in the Philippines. And then Aya is actually in Egypt. So
all over the world.
place. Yeah. It's a lot of fun. And it's interesting just seeing different cultures, lifestyles, things like that when you hop on a Zoom call together. So it's a blast.
And where did you find all these people? Are you using Upwork, recruiters? Like, how did you come across them?
Oh, all over the place. So a lot of it started with Upwork. Then I learned about Online Jobs PH. So that's where I source a lot of the people in the Philippines now. What I've learned actually works best is word of mouth from people within my business. Also, so we found some people that way organically. That's how Aya came into the business. We had somebody else working for us on the calling side that we sourced. Actually, I believe the company's name is Wazaf. It's just for Egyptian workers. We found a good closer on there. Unfortunately, it didn't work out long term, didn't align with our core values, but he recommended Aya, and Aya came in, has been amazing. So I'd say about half our team is from referrals from others, and the other half we just found naturally, Upwork, Online Jobs PH, and other sites like that.
Oh, that's cool. Do you have, I know for myself, I've really been very locked into like thinking of hires as funnels, and funneling to get the right people and trying to better document that process. Like I kind of had like some stuff and then that just kind of naturally came, but I didn't really have it set up for other people necessarily to do it. So I'm trying to get better about documenting, like, how am I hiring people? What am I going through it? And even as I hired someone for a position, then like, oh crap, no, maybe I should do this instead. Like how are you going about that, Mike, to find, you mentioned culture being something important to you and your team. How are you finding these people? I'm sure it depends on the role, but maybe you can give us an example of a kind of a funnel that you're doing to find the right folks.
Yeah, absolutely. So culture is huge for us. It's like so huge. Like if you cannot fit in with our team and our values, it doesn't matter how phenomenal you are, you're not going to work out with us. So that's very, very important. So typically what we do when we're going to hire someone else, we write up a job description if we don't already have one saved, if it's a role that's been filled before. We now take that job description always to AI, help clean it up with Claude or ChatGPT. Then we're typically posting that somewhere. What we always do in our job descriptions, and this has helped us a ton, is we will always write something in the job description, usually toward the end of like, make sure you respond with your favorite color in the subject line or in the first sentence or something like that. Or we might give a very basic task to do just right off the bat, or just, especially if it's like an acquisitions person or someone who will be on the phone, is like send a recording of yourself introducing yourself, and say your favorite thing to do on the weekend. So we like to do things like that because that'll already get rid of half the people right off the bat. Mm-hmm. From there, what's so important in my business is someone being able to figure things out. So typically too, as people start applying, I don't screen anyone to begin with. My assistant, really screens everybody, and she's phenomenal. I meet with her every day. She understands me probably better than I understand myself. She knows like what I would be happy with and what I would not. So she'll start meeting with people from there, typically with group interviews. It's amazing how great somebody will appear online, or they'll be messaging you back and forth, and then you schedule a one-on-one with them and they don't show up. And nothing is worse than that. So because of seeing so much of that in the past, we do group interviews to begin with everyone now. And it's shocking. Sometimes there'll be 5-6 people scheduled for a group interview and 2 or 3 will show up, even though almost all of them confirm saying they would be there. So we start there. We always weight room everyone. And Imi's great at taking notes on, okay, who showed up 5 minutes early, 2 minutes early. She's already there waiting, but she doesn't let anyone in, and just starts documenting like, what does that look like? And that's huge too, because we want people that really take ownership roles. Then she lets them all in, and then it's more just breaking the ice, getting to know each other, and then asking some general questions about it. From there, we typically understand whether it'll be a good cultural fit within our organization or not. If it's a good fit from there, she'll start ranking everybody. Then she'll give me the top 3. From there, I'll typically hop on a one-on-one with them after that. And a lot of times too, it's only hopping on one call with a person who she ranked first, and then just talking with them, going over some basic stuff, and then kick it off from there. So that's worked very, very well for us.
So how do you feel like in the group interview, how do you know they're a good culture fit? Like what's coming up? I mean, outside of being on time or being early, right? Like what kind of questions are you asking that it's like, okay, this person's a good fit for our culture?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great question. So a big thing in my business that we really instill is we're all human beings at the end of the day. So we're really looking for people that are just very natural, very, if I say like, what's your dream in life? What's your goal? What's your passion? Oh, I want to find a company to work at for the next 10 years. Okay, great. What else? Oh, that's pretty much it. I'm like, no, I like, what gets you exciting? Like, why do you wake up every day? What is your long-term goal? Can I make that happen in my business? So we'll start asking things like that. And then how do they start interacting with other people too? If you just explained your goal, your dream, what it means to be successful, then if the next question's asked to me and I say, wow, that's amazing, Dave. Like, thanks for sharing all that. To me, it's very similar to Dave's. I X, Y, and Z. So we'll start breaking it down that way. It's really just, most of us know within 2 to 3 minutes of talking to someone, is this someone I'd go on a long road trip with? Is this someone I'd like to spend a weekend with? Is this someone I want to get to know more and more? So typically very early on, it almost doesn't matter what the question is. You can just tell by their responses, like, yeah, this is somebody I'd be happy working next to for, hours on end. So that's a lot of what we're looking for. And then we're just looking for things like, how do you hold yourself accountable? And them taking ownership, like, you cannot hold me accountable. I hold me accountable, and I make sure to hold my accountable because of X, Y, and Z. Family is important to me. This is important to me. Like, why are those things important? So we look for people to just be real, to be honest. Something else we do that's really interesting, actually backing up just a little bit, in the job post, I will always put an error in the job post. So I will always say something like, oh, I need this by Friday, or analyze this based on Friday, but then I'll put Thursday's date. And the reason we do this is I'm seeing, will somebody go above and beyond to give me information for Thursday and Friday? Or will they ping me and say, hey, Mike, you put Friday, but it says Thursday's date. What's going on? What's so important in my business, and I feel like this is where a lot of people fail as leaders and just holding organizations, is they're the boss, they're right, you're wrong, doesn't matter. And that is 100% opposite in my business. Like, if I tell you something, Dave, and you think that's the stupidest thing you ever heard in your life, I want you to be like, Mike, that is so stupid. I would never do that. Why don't we do it this way? And I want you to tell me that. If I'm about to step on a snake, don't let me. Like, push me out of the way, shove me backwards, tell me to stop. And we see, especially in different countries too, it's harder and harder for some people to do that. Like, you hop on a call with the Philippines, you know, yes, sir, Dave. Okay, Mr. Dave. It's like, no. Like, it's just Dave, relax, let's be pals. And it's hard to overcome that, but that's what we really look for. Will you tell me when I'm wrong?
Interesting. No, that's good stuff, man, just in terms of catching it. So it sounds like for the most part, there's a little bit of technicals that you were looking for. Like, you were listening to see, okay, will they do a recording, for example? And you can kind of listen to intonation and voice if you're hiring like a lead manager or those kinds of folks. But like, how important is experience to you? As you look at these different folks, like, does that matter to you at all? Like, in terms of technical ability? Because I see so far there's not much measurement of, well, hey, if you want a data person, like, how do you know that they're decent at data, even if they might be a good culture fit, right?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So something we like to do somewhat earlier on in the screening process is send them a task. So like we'd send them a data related task. Tell me, what do you think the average price per acre should be in this area? If you don't know how to do that, watch this video, and we'll send them like a free YouTube video or something. So it's interesting too, because you mentioned data. Like, I'm horrible at data. I can hop on a call and role play with someone, see if they're a good caller. I cannot tell if somebody's good at data. And that's even been a challenge for the new data person we hired. I'm like, oh, we need somebody that can do SQL. And it wasn't until we were actually at the unconference that I learned, oh, everybody in the data world calls that SQL. Like, oh, okay. I didn't know that. I know nothing about this SQL thing. So like, if I know nothing about this, how am I even going to hire based on that? So I'm really just approaching them with different problems. Like, how would you solve that? Explain it to me. See if they have a good understanding of it. But more importantly than anything, I just want competency. Like, that's really what I want. Almost everything we do in this business, we can teach somebody else how to do it. Are you competent in learning it? Like, we all have access to YouTube. Almost everything you want to know in this business, you can learn on YouTube. YouTube University is like the best. So I really just want somebody who's competent in the role, and they're willing to do the research, put in the time, and figure it out. So that's what I hire most for. Everything else can be taught.
No, that's good stuff. I'm curious to know, you mentioned a few times as we were talking AI, and you mentioned earlier on that your gal that was doing texting is like, hey, I'm going to be replacing you with AI. So, you take the lead on doing that. Like, I'm curious, and I know you and Seth did a course together on it. I don't know if folks can still buy it or not, but I don't want to dive too much into that and take away from anything that you've said there, but I'm curious to know with the use of AI, like, how has your business been changing over the last couple of years since you got started? Like, are you doing texting with AI now and not that texter gal? Like, tell us about that a bit.
Yeah, great questions. Great questions. We are not texting with AI. Texting with AI is currently illegal unless they're reaching out to you first and you're going back and forth with it. What's great with AI, so ways that we've started implementing it in our business, we have a special trained custom GPT that we built out that's built on a lot of different sales trainings and things like that, and also has recordings and transcripts from very successful calls. So now what my team can do is actually take the recordings, take the transcripts of it, plug it in there, and get advice. What did they do well? What did they not do well? And it'll actually grade them on that. It's also, too, in the business, now when anybody comes with a question, your first place to ask that question is ChatGPT. We have a pro account. Everybody has access to it. Ask there first. If something's going wrong in the business, ask there. Bring your 131 to me based on that. And it's also helped us, too, figure out like how to approach things better. It's like, okay, we're not hitting KPIs. What does that mean? And it's like, I've never had a corporate job. I don't know what that looks like. After talking to ChatGPT for a bit, it's like, oh, okay, give a verbal warning. After that, put them on a performance improvement plan. I'm like, a PIP, like, what's a PIP? Like, what does that even look like? Like, I don't know any of these things. So it's helped us a lot in that regard. It's helped us start doing data enrichment. We started doing that. A lot of kudos to Callan on that regard too. So we've used it in a ton of different ways, as well as like Amy, my executive assistant. One of her roles in the business is every 2 weeks, make something more efficient, make something easier. And sometimes she'll just like, oh, we can add an automation with this. Sometimes she's going to ChatGPT saying, hey, this is an issue. This is what we're struggling with. Give me 3 ways we can solve it. Let's dive deeper into it from there. So it's really helped us a lot in that regard. And I also, too, I now don't have to like buy Grammarly for my team. I don't have to check emails before they go out, like nothing at all. They now have all of it at their fingertips. So they essentially have somebody way smarter than me. They can ask all these questions too. And that's really what's changed our business a ton.
Fascinating. So I want to dive into the call reviews stuff. So like one of the roles that we have recently filled to a degree is what I call lead manager director. And so their job is to work with the lead managers to make sure they're in process with the script and doing what they're supposed to do, and then call reviews. And so you talked about that they have to upload like a transcript or something. So you have a call like an open phone, or what are you guys doing? Walk me through that part of the process.
Yeah, so we have Follow Up Boss. Follow Up Boss records everything inside as well as transcribes it for us. If not, we do have a transcribing tool we can go to, but we're in Follow Up Boss, so it's all right there. So they actually, some of their homework too is they have to fill out 2 call reviews. So we have a Google sheet that we just fill out, did they ask past, present, future questions? Did they ask, are you ready to sell this? Is anybody in your family stopping it? Things like that. So they'll do that manually, but then they can also plug this into a custom GPT we built that's catered to what our scripts look like, how to handle objections, what's good, what's bad, all these things. And that can actually give them a grade, but it can also say, you handled this great. You didn't handle that great. You need to work more on this. You shouldn't use filler words like this, and the other. You've said that 18 times. And it can actually just help them understand how they can do better in their calls in the future. So it's not to the point of like Gong.io or something where it can actually hear tonality in their voice, but it's to the point it can see everything that they said. And then it's like, they mentioned their kids in the background. They told their kids to quiet down, but you never asked about their kids. That would be a great place to build rapport. Dive into it like, oh, how many kids do you have? Or, oh, snot-nosed brats, they're the worst, or whatever that may be.
Yeah.
So it's really helped us a ton in that. I know some people have actually set it up so after the call is done, they'll just have a Zapier integration that'll automatically send it to that custom GPT, Gemini, whatever large language model they're using. And then that will automatically grade them and send it back to them and give them updates by the end of the week. So a lot of ways to do it, a lot of ways to run it through.
So I'm not as much of a GPT guy as you or Seth are. Like, I imagine the hardest part is the training, right? You got to train GPT to know what to look for. It's not like it just knows automatically, right? There's some training time involved in that. Was that, how long would you think it took you, like from beginning to end, to have it sufficient enough that it could start doing the job?
I mean, I'm really around the AI world a ton. So for me, it took 4 to 6 hours to probably build it out to where I was happy with it. Yeah.
Did you have to like pay a prompt engineer at all, like to help with any of that kind of stuff, or you just felt you had enough knowledge yourself, you didn't really have to like invest in another team member to help you do it?
Yeah, good question. No, so I felt good enough about it myself. So especially in terms of like custom GPTs, when you're building those yourself, you're going to need a certain amount of knowledge to put into there. That's typically the easy part that most of us can figure out is like, here's Ajay talking about sales calls. Let me just grab that transcription, put that in there. This is a call that went well. Let me put that in there. Like filling up the knowledge base is the easy part. What's hard for that is then, okay, what are the instructions? How do you prompt it to make the person better? So the easiest way to do that, and what I do, what my whole team does now, is they go to a different custom GPT called Custom GPT Builder. And you just tell it exactly what you're looking for, and it will give you a huge list of instructions that are prompted perfectly. And then we can just take that, plug that into the instruction base on our own custom GPT. And it's amazing. And now it understands, we're land investors. This is what we're looking for. This is what we're grading for. This is what's going on. Use your knowledge base for this, that, and the other. Don't worry about this. Don't worry about that. If anything in the knowledge base mentions like house wholesaling, ignore that. Keep in mind we're a land investing company. So it's worked really well in that regard.
Fascinating. Very cool. Do you get like a scorecard out of it? Like, hey, rank off of these areas, and because you said a grade, so it ranks a different areas.
Yeah. So it'll give them different rankings based on different sections of it. Did you cover the questions we wanted to? Did you build rapport? Did you mirror them? Different things like that.
Writing and sending purchase agreements doesn't have to take all day. With Stride CRM, you can generate a full contract with one click, send it to the seller, and track every step until it's digitally signed. No more switching between DocuSign and Google Drive and email. Stride keeps everything digital, fast, and organized in one place. Visit stridecrm.co and start watching your business improve today.
That's very, very cool stuff, sir. Love it. Well, I would love for you to talk a little bit about, Mike, in your business as a leader with the team that you've built over time, what's been your highest point? So paint a picture for me of the time that's like, man, I'm on top of the mountain as a leader right now. Things are just clicking. Tell us about that.
Yeah, this year, like toward the end of last year and really this year, I've been rocking that high for a while now. Really just put amazing people in place. We build our business around traction by Gino Wickman. So we really follow all those key principles there. And really what I think is so important is for the people who work for you, for them to really own their role. And I'm constantly telling people on the team, like, you're CEO of outreach marketing, or you're CEO of intake calls. And if somebody comes to me with a question like, what should I do here? That's a great question. What do you think? If you were in my spot, if you were CEO, what would you do? And we love putting things in that way. And the whole team's kind of understood that to the point where they almost just hate asking me questions at this point because they're like, Mike's just going to ask me the same question, which is true. But it's really instilling ownership in them and teaching them like, hey, we're all in this together. Something that I do that's a little bit different than my business, than most businesses I hear about, is we do profit sharing. So I actually give out about 4% of the net profit at the end of every quarter to my team. They split it evenly. So what's great about that is they now also understand the difference between negotiating a $10,000 deal and a $100,000 deal, and what that will mean for them as well. So I make sure we have good alignment there, and just feeling really good that now I know I can travel and the business will continue to do well. It will continue to grow, maybe not grow as quickly as I would like, but they're really great at doing that. And I think a good example of this last year when I was in Africa, I had no internet when I was out there, only when I was at the lodge. And when I'm at the lodge, I'm really just sleeping. So it was crazy because during that time, we were using launch control and launch control went down completely. And it's like, okay, I can't really talk to anybody. There's not much I can do to fix this problem. We're all in different time zones right now. And I was shocked. My team started cold calling. It's something that we didn't do in our business, but they started cold calling. They took ownership and they're like, hey, this isn't working. Like, we have to figure something out. And I love that. Those are people who own the role. And I think that's probably been one of my highest moments of them just handling all of this. And I love that. I'm to the point where I can be pretty much completely out of the business. At the end of the day, I just have to look over stuff and then possibly talk to a title company or two and just wire funds. So very blessed with that. And I love that.
So you feel like your main role is kind of like the money guy and signing off on documents and that kind of thing at this point?
Yeah, that, and just how can we make the business even bigger? How can we take it to that next level again? And just bringing tons of ideas to them just for them to say, Mike, that's shiny object. We shouldn't do this and we shouldn't do that. And I'm like, okay, that's why I love you guys. But yeah, most of it's just being a visionary at this point for the most part.
And what is that vision? Lay that out for us. What do you? What's your vision for the company? Where are you at now, I guess, and where do you want to go?
Yeah, that's a good question that I still struggle with. I love what I do. I love the business. Right now, the plans for the business is let's start doing the same amount of business, or maybe potentially a little bit less business, but let's raise those deal sizes more and more and more. Let's get into more subdivides, do more entitlements. Let's fund other people's deals. I think that's where we're going, is more of like a quality over quantity right now. That's the big picture, and it's a lot of the mindset of, 10x is easier than 2x. Easier to get $1 million from one person than 100,000 from 10 people. So right now, that's what we're focusing on, really getting more specialized in areas, hyper focusing on those and going after those larger spread deals. Long term.
Interrupt on that real quick.
Please.
I think something I was talking with Seth about actually just the other day that I really take issue with, that a lot of people in the land businesses, just send more mail. Add a 0 to the deals. They make it sound like it's so flippin' easy, and I totally disagree with that. I'm curious to gather your thoughts. Is it just as simple as, just add another 0, I'm doing the same thing? Or as you think about doing 10x rather than 2x, are you having to reinvent a lot of parts of the business and the way that you're thinking, the way that you're approaching it to get to some of these goals you're talking about?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I definitely don't think it's send more mail. To put a 0 on is not necessarily send more mail. What I think it really takes to get there is, what do your systems and processes look like? If somebody comes into our pipeline, if we can't make a deal to work now, are they on a good follow-up for the next year or two? And then what does that follow-up look like? Where I think some of these smaller deals, you can have very generic follow-ups. This is what a title, this is what does this or does that. I think for these larger deals, it's really, I know you mentioned you had kids at one point. Am I coming in and saying, hey, Dave, it's great to talk to you? My kids were doing this the other day, and it just really bothered me. I wonder, have you ever dealt with that issue? How are you solving that? I know this is weird, but you're a pro at being a parent, and really going to that next level to build that rapport, really become friends with them. And then it's hey, when you're ready to do this, we're here, we're available. And then also just hyper focusing on that area to really understand it more and more and more, and then develop that relationship to a deeper level. I think a good example of this, actually, last year we did a subdivide deal, and it was a buy, I think, around 325, 350, and we exited for about 600. And looking at my closer's time on the phone, I think she ended up talking about 15 or 16 hours to this gentleman. And
it's a lot of time.
It's a ton of time. And I'm so glad she did. And she's so glad she did too. It's totally worth it. And I think it'd be easy to be like, no, you can't spend that much time on the phone with somebody. Where it's like, no, on these larger deals, you can. If the guy's nervous, there's a lot of money going around. It's like, this is what it takes. If we need to fly out and go meet with a seller in person, like, we will do that. We will get a title company to call that person up to let them know everything's good, or let them go sign at the title company. So I think that's where it becomes a lot more of really becoming a master of your skill and really owning that area and understanding what's going on in those leads.
Do you feel like you're going to completely move away from what I would call medium-sized flips in your vision, kind of for let's say the next 1 to 2 years? Forget 5 or 10, just the immediate future of the next 1 to 2. Or do you see yourself kind of doing a mix of everything? What does that look like for you?
Yeah, so we're planning to get into these bigger and bigger deals completely, but naturally we still have a lot of people we've contacted over the 2 or 3 years that I've been doing this now that still sometimes come into the funnel. So if something comes into the funnel, it's just really looking at, is the juice worth the squeeze? So analyzing things that way. If it's a easy process, if it's an easy property to dispo, things like that, we still might take it on, even if it's not at that threshold that we want. But it's not that we would be actively marketing to those smaller size deals necessarily, though I think those still creep in naturally, no matter what you do. So we'll take them as they come.
Interesting. So not targeting them. I feel like a lot of the times, Mike, that some people just kind of burn the boats, and which can be a really good thing in some ways, that, okay, this is the one thing that we're doing. But then on the other hand, it's like leaving what made you successful on the other hand, where it's like you're burning the boats and you're not kind of turning back. And I don't know. How do you feel about that aspect of it as a leader in your business, where your team's trusting you to lead them to that destination?
Absolutely. So I burned the boats early on in the business. When I was about 8 months into the business, we learned about texting. It's like, oh, this is the new frontier. And we completely shut off mail and just started texting. And then we did no deals for like 3-4 months. And it was a horrible move then. And I still do not recommend it to anyone now. But then we got really good at texting, and we usually pick up a deal 1 in every 8,000 people we text. So I wouldn't recommend burning the boats, so to speak. I would keep doing what you're doing. I think it's more of how they talk about like doing a side hustle. It's like, you want to get into land flipping, you want to get into this, that, and the other. Treat it as a side hustle. Keep your W-2. Okay, when that side hustle is making more money, maybe then let it replace that W-2 or anything else. That's how I would go about it. So like, even what we're doing here, we still have so many drips going out, so many follow-ups going on, that we're not just going to, okay, hey, we're done with those size deals, forget about them. It's like, no, as those still come in, let's still work them. Let's just not actively try to get more of those.
Do you feel like as the visionary for the company, like you're doing one channel, it sounds like, with texting, and there's some risk in that, which, experienced last November. And maybe people with more expensive properties, maybe you need to do a different channel to get to them, or maybe another one's more effective. Like, how have you thought about split testing, or ways of like, what, maybe this isn't the right channel, or maybe we need to do multi-channel marketing kind of thing? Curious to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah. So right now, the biggest thing we do is we text, and then we follow up with RVMs. And we'll be re-engaging some of those people too in the future. We'll probably get into some cold emailing, cold calling, and mail in the future. Right now, we have more leads than we can process, so it's a good problem to have. What I pride myself on a lot is not that I have a successful land flipping company, that does a lot of texting. I pride myself on, I have a good business with phenomenal employees. I love my team. I love my employees. Netflix, for a long time, they had part of their culture was at the end of every quarter, senior management would come to the managers and say, if Dave came to you today and said, hey guys, I'm going to Amazon Prime Video, would you fight to keep Dave at Netflix? And if the answer is no, then you should probably just let Dave go. Say, Dave, it's been a pleasure. Here's a great severance package. Best of luck. But if the answer is a yes, then those are the people you want to keep, and those are the rock stars you want to have. And that's something we do in our business is the keeper test. Would I fight to keep this person in the business? And right now I would fight to keep everybody in my business. And I even tell my team too, it's like if the president said it's illegal to buy and sell land tomorrow, we would shift into something else. And my team understands that, and they're very good at managing in different channels and going in different directions. So I'm very lucky for that. So as we venture into this new market or just more expensive markets, there's a chance we might end up shutting down texting in the future. It might be mail, it might be cold calls, it might be paying somebody off Craigslist to go door knock for us and give them, a basket full of cookies and say, hey, you own a property, 6 hours from here, we're interested. So my team's very flexible with all of that. So I don't worry about it too much. We do A/B testing on everything we do right now in terms of our text and our ringless voicemails. Elise runs that side of it. So we're understanding that, but it could shut down at any time. Absolutely. And we can always shift to something else, and my team's ready.
It's fascinating. Love it, man. That's good stuff. Now, we talked about your highest point as a leader, and the fact your team was able to shift and do the cold calling and just they really took ownership of it. What about the lowest point where she's like, man, I'm just in the pits and I am just not feeling good about myself as a leader. Tell us about that time for you.
Yeah. Isn't that like every other week in the land business? You're just not feeling good about yourself in general, No. Okay. This one hits hard. It really does. I will tell you, Dave, I am in the land business because of a VA. I am. I happened to find a piece of land. It was an acquaintance of mine approached me about a property. He was going to lose it to a tax auction. I bought it out from under him, flipped it really quick to a builder. I've told this story before on other podcasts, so I won't get into the details too much. But I had massive success with that. At the time, I've had VAs ever since I was 19 years old, so very accustomed to that. And they always know I'm looking for another revenue stream, and what else can we do? So I had success on this one land deal. And then my VA did some research and he's like, oh, this is really cool. And then he's like, hey, there's this program out there called Land Academy and they'll teach you how to flip land and everything. Maybe you should get into that. I can sign us up. And he did. And that's how I got into the land business and doing mailers and everything, was just signing up for that guru program. But he found that for me. And what was great is we really started to build that business. And then we hired somebody else. And then we hired somebody else. Then we hired somebody else. And we were sending out a lot of mailers. And then we transitioned into texting and everything was going well. And then his quality started to drop more and more and more and more as we hired more people. And I did not realize it at the time, but it's just the Peter principle. Like, I expected him to be able to manage all of these people. And I love the guy to death. I would trust him with my life still to this day. We would talk every day and we built the business essentially together. But the issue was the business grew out of him. It got bigger than he could manage. And he's somebody who you need to be looking over his shoulder the whole time to make sure things are getting done, which I did not realize at the time when I was building it next to him, but I essentially was looking over his shoulder the whole time. Mm-hmm. And then as we got bigger and bigger, I wasn't there to look over his shoulder and work just fell through and things got worse and worse and worse. And eventually I had to let him go. And it was one of the hardest things in the world for me ever, which I think it's a blessing in disguise now because he was also getting burnt out. And it was becoming a really hard spot with both of us. Because I want more out of him and he wants to give more, but he's also just not wired to do all these things without somebody just managing him constantly. And he was so loyal to the business, he would never stop. He would never quit on his own, no matter how bad it got, to the point where I eventually had to let him go. And it was such a hard conversation and we wished each other the best of luck. I gave him a nice severance package on the way out, but that was a low point, and it stunk. Letting go of people really stinks. And especially, at least in my organization, we tell each other we love each other. We call each other a family. We know each other very intimately and we love one another. So it's so hard letting someone go like that. And especially considering this person built the business with me, that was a huge struggle. And I mean, it took me like weeks to let go of this guy, maybe months, just because it's one of those things like, I think I should, but you can't buy loyalty. You can't buy trust, and it's just, that sucked, Dave.
Yeah,
I'm still going to therapy on that one, dude. That was horrible, man. Man, I could cry right now just talking about it. I love that guy.
It's a hard thing, it's particularly, you're growing as a person and the business is evolving. And I'm in a situation where I've told this person ahead of time. I kind of had named her like a COO. But then as the business has evolved, I've come to realize, wait a minute, she's not the COO that I need. Mm-hmm. And she knows it's coming because I've given her forewarning. But essentially, she has to take a step down here in the future as that COO person comes into the business. That's a hard pill to swallow, that she may not be with me, just because of the big ego hit to stick on. Any advice for me in dealing with that and managing that process?
I think what's so important with these is to be open and honest, but also just talk to them. Just say, how do you feel like this is going? Do you feel like you're the right role for this? If you were me, how would you handle these situations? Because it is hard. And I think what's so hard about it too is this is your fault, Dave. It's not just you have to do this to her, but it's also a failure on your part, which also eats at you, or maybe not you, but at least things like that eat at me. Anything that goes wrong in our business, it's ultimately our fault, 100%. I'm a big fan of massive accountability. So it's hard to do that because the ideas that we have for the future, and as that future comes, you're like, oh, that's totally different. The vacation in Mexico sounds like a great idea. And then you go and then you're hungover and you're sunburned and life is horrible. It's like, oh, the vision was great. The reality is horrible. But I think so much of it is being open and honest with them, just sitting down with them and saying, hey, we talked about this in the future. We were planning that way. How do you feel it's going? And you might be surprised if you start to open up that door. She might come through and say, I was really passionate about this. I really wanted to do this, but looking at it now, I don't think I'm the best fit. And maybe you can get out of it a little bit easier that way. Now, unfortunately, if she says, oh my gosh, I'm so excited, I can't wait to start this, this is what I've been dreaming of. Then I think it's, for this to happen, X, Y, and Z needs to be met. Do you feel like that's happening? And you might just, have to say I don't feel like it's happening. I don't feel comfortable with this. I'm really sorry. I failed you. And let them know hey, this is my fault, 100% on me. And I take full responsibility. And I'm so sorry. It's an honor to work with you. It's a pleasure to work with you. I would love to continue working with you, but this is what it has to look like in the future. If you have any other ideas or alternatives, I am all ears, and I'd love to figure out a way to make this a win-win for everyone.
Well, I think what the way you're talking really speaks to you as a leader in terms of taking responsibility, right? It's really easy to shift blame onto somebody else. But I think people will follow you and respect you more for you saying, this is my bad. I made a mistake here, right? That I think part of it too that people have to think about is, what is their place in the organization, right? If you run into a situation like I am, well, are they still valuable to meet your test that you talked about earlier? And then where can you find a place for them, and how can you paint a picture for them of that new position, and will they buy into it, right? Does that fit their vision for where they want to go? Anywho, interesting stuff, sir. Now, Mike, we talked about ChatGPT. Are there any other systems? You mentioned Follow Up Boss. Any systems or tools that you're using with leadership that you think are interesting or different beyond the usual CRM kind of thing?
We're a big fan of Fathom. We use that in all our meetings. All our meetings are on Zoom. We use Fathom. Our Zoom calls are, you show up, camera on, ready to go. I want to see you. I want you to see me. We have a really good KPI tracking sheet, but it's all on a Google sheet. We used to, back in the day, have Google Forms and have a more robust program that you would just fill out your KPIs. It'd automatically go to this and then show all these graphs and this and the other. And while I can still show some of these graphs, we now actually backed up on that a little bit and now have everybody fill it in manually. also in a Google Sheet where they can also see everybody else's and see what's going on. And that's really helped our business, just having them take more ownership in that role to see, how did I do yesterday? How am I doing today? How is the person who has the same role as me doing? How's the person who had the same role as me but is no longer at the company? How are they doing it a year and a half ago? I think it's great in that regard. And then, I mean, we have daily huddles, and every day too, it's what happened yesterday. What do your metrics look like? What's the number one thing you have to get done today? So that's really helped a lot. Besides that, while I'm like super passionate about AI and I use it a ton in my life and somewhat in my business, it's mostly like Zapier, ChatGPT, Claude, Discord. Like that's where most everything stems from to begin with, and then just Google Workplace. So there's not any late breaking tools, nothing that it's like, oh, here's the easy button, Dave, you know?
Yeah.
I wish there was.
Well, I think with KPIs, it's so interesting that I've gotten more and more into it the last few months as we've really kind of changed the business. And what can be hard is when you haven't done it before, or you haven't had someone in that role, you know, and you're trying to figure out like what is good, what is bad. It becomes really, really hard to know if you haven't done it before. And you could even ask other land investors their experience. But until your team is doing it, it's because you might have a different process than somebody else. It may not be an apple to an orange. You know what I mean? So how have you thought about KPIs that you mentioned, and what's good and what's bad in directing the team?
Yeah, it's a really good question. KPIs are hard. Just to back up though for a second, early on you asked me if I care about experience. And while I typically don't, one thing I will say is whenever somebody comes into our organization who has experience, especially working for a bigger company, a big question I ask them, and something I always encourage them to do, is tell me what's missing in my business. You know, like something that actually came through the other day, one of my callers, Aya, she said, Mike, where's the sheet that shows me on average how much a survey cost is, and a drone and a perk test and a da-da-da-da-da-da-da? And I'm like, oh, it doesn't exist. She's like, oh, in the house wholesaling world, you know, we had one of those. We could just plug in the square footage and we'd know how much a roof cost would be and how much foundation issues would be and, you know, retiling and X, Y, and Z. And I'm like, that's a genius idea. Tell me more. But she used to work for a house wholesaler where they would net around $7 million a year. They had 60 callers on the phone every day. You know, and it's like 10 dedicated closers. I'm like, okay, like you've worked in an organization that's at that much higher level. What does my organization need? So I'm a big fan of asking employees, associates that question. In terms of KPIs, tracking after that, it's sometimes hard to do because now that we're going into like larger deals, what a good KPI looks like may be different. And we have KPIs that we have goals attached to those KPIs, but then we have other KPIs in the business that I just want to see what the number is. You know, so as a new lead comes in, it comes into our CRM as phase 1. At the end of the day, how many leads are left in phase 1? Because a simple KPI like that, the goal used to be like, hey, you have to clear this out. But then we started doing more outbound marketing, and eventually too, it's like you cannot clear out that many leads in a day. So instead, the question is just how many are left over? And this way we can know once that number gets above, 25, it's like, okay, we either need to cut back our marketing, which typically not the best idea, or we need to hire another person in this role. So some of our KPIs measure things like that if we need someone else in the role. I think a big KPI we track is talk time. That's one of the biggest ones for our callers. How long are you on the phone with people? How long are you on the phone with them? How many calls did you make? How many conversations did you actually have? How many appointments did you set? How many were completed? We track that a lot with our acquisitions team. How many offers made? How many agreed verbally? How many actually ended up signing? And our acquisition outreach, we're tracking how many texts were sent. Out of those texts sent, how many responded? How many did you assign as a drip? How many did you push to our CRM? What's your average response time? How many RVMs did you drop this day? How many were actually successful? On our data side, it's, do we have enough leads enough prospects for the next 60 days. How many lists did you pull? How many did you upload to? Now we're using Smarter Contact, things like that. So we have a wide amount of tracking there. And then we're also tracking how much new profit came into the pipeline. What's our revenue? What's our average profit per deal? And
that's a lot of stuff to keep track of altogether. Like, do you find that challenging, or is it pretty streamlined at this point? It's not so bad.
Oh, I don't know. I don't do any of it, Dave. It's my team's problem. No. You mean, is it hard for me to click on the Google sheet and be like, yeah, they filled it out. This is great. No, it's really not so bad. Just because like everybody owns their role. So like we talk about Elise, for example. Elise is going to tell me how many texts were sent, text responded, drips assigned, leads pushed to CRM response time, RVMs dropped, RVM successful. Like that's it for her. For one caller, it's going to be her talk time, calls made, connected, conversions, things like that. IME is going to be tracking our revenue coming in, average deal. Our due diligence guy will be how many deals did he analyze? Did he clear the pipeline? Our data persons, how many lists did they pull? How many are uploaded into launch control or smarter contacts? So while like if I rattle off all the KPIs we track, there's a ton, but that's all segmented within the business to that person who's responsible for said KPI.
So you really break it down in that, okay, this person's responsible for 2 or 3, this person's responsible for 2 or 3, this person's responsible for 2 or 3, and then it all filters into your sheet to have people check it out. Have you changed anything, based on like, do you have like red light, green light, yellow light kind of a thing? And it's like, oh crap, I need to change something.
Yes. Yeah, we do have that. Things that have been changed. So one thing that was definitely changed too, which I touched on earlier, is like phase 1. Like, did you clear out that pipeline? Like before that was the metric. Like you clear that out every day, no matter what. And then before you know it, now we have more drips going on. We're increasing our RVMs. And now it's like, no, Dave, you need to call 150 people today. Like, what's wrong with you? You're failing. And I'm like, okay, this is bad now on my part as a leader, because I gave you a metric that's almost impossible to hit. It's like, I need you to call 150 people today because that's one of your KPIs. But your other KPIs have averaged 10 minutes on the phone with somebody. It's like, okay, how are you going to do all of that in a day? As well with triple dialing them in the morning and in the evening. Like, it's just too hard to manage. So some of these we've started taking off the goal. And a lot of it too, like you start thinking about what are the core things that really matter? Core things that matter is like talk time, just because that rapport building ends up getting signed contracts. So talk time, appointments set, offers made, and then offers actually signed. Like those are the main KPIs we track. And typically we understand if your talk time is getting met, everything else will fall into place. So it's really working on that talk time and then kind of teaching the team. It's not so much about calling 100 people. It's about, calling 20 people, but having a good, genuine conversation with those 20. Like, remember us for life. So those things have started to change a bit more and more, as well as what I thought would be a great idea in the beginning was, okay, let's look at our numbers from last year and let's just reverse engineer it all. And it's like, oh, okay, well, if we want to hit this goal now this year, and these were our numbers last year, look, we only have to send out 960,000 text messages, no problem. But it's like, to increase the funnel that much does become problems. So we have started noticing things like that. And I think a big thing too, I am constantly putting my team on, like, this is our monetary goal. This is what we want to hit. So again, like if you made one call this week and you talked to that seller for 35 hours on the phone, but that ends up being a $200,000 spread, terrific. Great. Thank you. I love you to death. You're getting a promotion. Like you're the best. So it's really like, while we look at these KPIs, we're constantly going back to our team for feedback as well, because these are just numbers on the page, and numbers on the page don't always tell you the whole explanation. So it's like, hey, numbers were lower. Like talk time was high. This is great, but these numbers were lower. What's going on? And hopefully they have a good reason to.
It's been fascinating as we've dug more into it. Like people, at least on our team, they tended to dial into like one of the KPIs. So like we were on our lead managers been tracking appointments being set, dials, and talk time. Well, I think dials are really easy. And so like there were a lot of dials going on, but then not quality conversation. Like the dials is great, but you actually need to spend time talking to these people and sticking to the script,
Yes.
and pulling information out and getting the talk time up. So it's fascinating playing with those. Well, Mike, I appreciate your time, sir. I don't want to. We're over our allocated time already, just because we're having fun here. Do you have any major resources or books or something that you think for us as land investors, you'd say, man, this is one thing you guys need to check out that I don't hear about too often?
Oh, major resources. Traction by Gino Wickman. Absolutely. Huge fan of that. And What the Heck is EOS? I actually have my team read that. So it's actually a book written for employees to understand what this whole traction thingy is that their bosses are implementing. So I'm a big fan of that. Huge fan of Chris Voss and his masterclass on masterclass.com on how to negotiate is great. Buy Back Your Time by Dan Martell. I know everybody's talking about it. Phenomenal book there. And I think also just a great resource too is actually just your team. Spend some time, get to know them, get to understand what's going on, and really ask them, how do we solve this problem? Like they're the ones in the trenches every day. I think we don't count on them enough, and I think it's easy for us to think like, I need to know how to do this perfectly so I can have somebody else do it. And it's like, look, I don't think Jeff Bezos understands how the whole packaging process works at Amazon. Maybe he does. He's a genius. But, there's so many things. I think a lot of times as leaders, we have this mindset of, I need to know how to do it so I can train the next person how to do it. And I think you're just going to end up pigeonholing yourself or just hitting a ceiling you're never going to be able to break through if you don't just trust people to come in to do it, or know that they can do better jobs than you. Like, why do you need to learn this? So I think that is huge. And just giving your team some leeway, explain the goal to them and really get ideas from them. I think that's the biggest thing. Trust your team, especially if you have aligned your team correctly, you're all on the same page, should be on the same side.
Love it. Love it. And where can people find you, Mike, if they want to look you up?
Oh, you can hit me up from my website, mikebalcom.com. You can message me, MEET, MEET at landbh.com. Shoot me an email. You want to get together sometime, you got a question, anything there. Yeah, I'll probably have more social media in the future, but not much right now. I personally don't spend time on social media, but I do think it's important to have a presence. So yeah, maybe I'll have more things by then. But I appreciate it, Dave. This has been a blast.
Thanks, Mike. Appreciate you, sir. We'll talk soon.
All right. Take care.
All right. Well, that wraps up today's episode. If this was helpful, don't just let it live in your head. Take one idea from today and actually put it in practice. That, my friends, is where the real progress happens. If you want to check out and keep the conversation going with other land investors like you want to make sure to check out a whole bunch of free resources and talk about challenges that we all go through. Please come and check out our Leadership in Land community on School. We've got bonus content, real discussions, and a free leadership course. No hype required at all. Just check out leadershipinland.com or go to school, that's SKOOL.com/leadershipinland. Appreciate you being here. Talk soon.